funeral was exceptionally grand. I was originally Zhao Xun's first wife. I ruled the imperial harem for 4 years, dutiful and conscientious, never making a single mistake. Even when he later doted on consort Chen, causing a rift between mother and son, it was still I who mediated everywhere. When his favored consort fell ill, he never left her side. I watched him for 3 days, going without food or water. Yet, when it came to me, he showed no grief. He only held my gradually cooling fingertips, remaining silent for a long time.
If there is a next life, I will still grant you the position of Empress.
Who would have thought that I would truly start over? At that time, Zhao Xun had not yet met the true love of his heart, so he let the Empress select a virtuous and talented lady to be his princess. The Empress chose me. When his gaze swept over, my finger shifted slightly, changing to another person.
Let us choose that Lady Li.
Just as my eyes met Zhao Xun's, I hurriedly looked away. Seated above was the Prince of Wei, who had just reached 20, dressed in splendid robes, handsome of face, yet his expression was filled with an otherworldly, proud aloofness. It was just time for him to discuss marriage. Since he had no one in his heart, he left everything to the Empress's decision. In this life, the Empress had also asked me, but I politely declined. So the Empress let out a soft sigh of regret, and after a moment of hesitation, her finger slowly fell upon another name.
Li Shuanghua. Let us choose that Lady Li.
Li Shuanghua stood up with a smile, bowing her head to express her gratitude. Zhao Xun slightly raised his eyelids, his indifferent gaze sweeping over her for a brief moment, just as he had once looked at me. There was no praise, nor was there any dislike. It was merely an attitude of, this will do, as he accepted this marriage. Following custom, the Empress Dowager asked him, speaking calmly,
What is your opinion, Prince of Wei?
He replied indifferently, as long as she is not my true love, anyone will do as my primary wife.
I defer entirely to Mother.
Stepping out of the palace gates, a continuous drizzle was falling, forming puddles on the ground that reflected a blurry, flickering figure. I slightly lifted one side of my umbrella, gazing at my 15-year-old self in the water's reflection. For a moment, it felt like a dream. Zhao Xun is a man of his word. Since he has given his promise, his marriage to her will certainly not be broken. I will finally be spared from dying of grief and worry. I remember it as if it were yesterday. At the moment of my passing, mourners arrived in an endless stream. The civil and military officials knelt in respect, while the noble woman knelt inside the inner hall. Yet, Consort Chen was noticeably absent. She was of delicate health and feared catching any illness. Zhao Xun watched over my bedside, holding my freezing hand. The silk sleeves covered my palm, which was filled with warmth, my eyes half closed. I struggled to think of the final arrangements I needed to make. If a new empress must be chosen, then let it be noble Consort Li. She is mature and prudent, and surely will not mistreat Consort Chen. After all, I had my own selfish motives. First, although I had openly and secretly sparred with Li Shuanghua, I respected her. Her lifelong pursuit was the pinnacle of power. I am willing to help her take this final step. Second, deep down, I utterly resent Consort Chen and Zhao Xun. She entered the palace as a commoner, as a childless secondary consort. Within the imperial court, it triggered a massive upheaval. Loyal ministers presented memorials, and my father's private letter was delivered into my hands. It happened to be the end of the year. The affairs of the inner palace were complex and chaotic, and I was pregnant at the time. Yet, out of duty, I had no choice but to brace myself and remonstrate with him. Heavy snow was falling outside the door, yet he summoned only me, showing consideration, in the end, for our unborn child. The room was filled with warmth, while his face was dark and gloomy. Looking down on all living beliefs, he lowered his gaze and spoke only 2 sentences to me.
Empress, must even you force us? You reside deep within the palace. How could you understand? I am extremely fortunate to have found a companion to whom I am willing to give my heart.
I froze in shock, clutching the corner of my robe in extreme embarrassment. A whole heart. It is something I once had too. The year I married Zhao Xun, I had just turned 16 when my bridal veil was lifted and I met those cool, deep eyes. My heart fluttered with endless ripples. For 3 years after, I was the Princess of Wei, and 3 years as Empress. We got along harmoniously, always treating each other with mutual respect. I had believed there was, after all, affection between us. Overwhelmed by grief, I failed to notice the snow clinging to my shoes had melted into puddles, leaving the floor wet. As I was leaving, I accidentally slipped and fell before the hall. I had no choice but to rest quietly to preserve the pregnancy. This accident made Zhao Xin do the unprecedented and withdraw his imperial decree. That young girl, having not received a title and being unstable of mind, actually cursed publicly.
That Empress. I thought she was virtuous and kind and wanted to pay my respects to her, who knew that to stop another's rise, she would actually use her own unborn child as a pawn. Such scheming is truly disgusting.
She really should not have touched my sore spot, forcing my ailing body up. I summoned her and ordered her to be slapped 20 times on the face. With her cheeks swollen high, she covered her face and wept as she ran out the door. Upon hearing the news, Zhao Xun flew into a rage. To stand up for her, he immediately conferred her as noble Consort Chen, using this to keep her safe. Consort Chen and I thus formed a deep-seated enmity, but it was not that I targeted her deliberately. She was the one who insulted the Empress first. If I did not punish her, how could I rule the imperial harem in the future? I explained the whole story to Zhao Xun. After he heard it, he only gave a faint smile, a smile tinged with a bit of sarcasm.
If you wanted to show your authority, you could have just lied to the outside world that you punished her. Why did you have to actually punish her?
My heart clenched in an instant, as I suddenly came to realize that the person before me was not just a sovereign. He could also become someone else's backer, and would even, for the sake of an outsider, embarrass me. Afterward, Consort Chen monopolized the emperor's favor, and all the other concubines had to yield to her. I was left with no recourse. I worried all day long, constantly associating my situation with those deposed and fallen empresses of the past. Zhao Xun was by no means a weak ruler. He held absolute power, holding the lives of everyone in his hands. When I punished Consort Chen before, he blamed and reprimanded me. If I ever stand in her way in the future, I dare not imagine what my end would be. My anxiety weighed heavily on my mind, and my body grew weaker day by day. In my 7th month of pregnancy, Consort Chen offended me once again. Cradling her pet in her arms, she said out of nowhere,
"Your ladyship, trying the same old trick again won't work anymore."
My brow furrowed deeply, and I ordered my servants to send her away and close the doors to all visitors. Unfortunately, it was already too late. The vicious dog suddenly went mad, growling and lunging straight at me. Although someone stepped in to shield me, I was still terribly shaken and fell to the ground. By the time Zhao Xun arrived, noble Consort Li had already ordered her detention. Consort Chen wept pitifully, her delicate wrists covered in bruises from being grabbed. She sobbed and said,
"I don't know why either, but Her Majesty collapsed the moment she saw me, and she even ordered my dog to be put to death."
Zhao Xun helped her up and walked toward me, burning with rage, convinced I was using my unborn child to frame her again. But when he entered the room, he only saw servants carrying away basins of bloody water. I had gone into difficult labor. The baby lived for only half a day, passing away before we could even grant him a name. I remained unconscious for 3 days, and Zhao Xun stayed by my side for 2 nights. As I hovered near death, I sensed him leaning close to whisper in my ear.
I was foolish. I was wrong to believe her. If only you would open your eyes. You may deal with her however you wish.
In the end, I managed to pull through. Upon waking up, I dismissed the attending servants, took a knife, and went to find Consort Chen. The April weather was no longer cold, yet I still could not stop shaking all over, unable to even hold the hilt steadily. The guards did not dare step forward to stop me. Consort Chen slumped on the ground, her hair becoming messy, her eyes filled with sheer terror. With just a few stabs, I thought she could accompany my deceased child in the grave. But this fatal strike ultimately missed its mark. A stray arrow flew from a distance and shot straight through my hand. The bow was in Zhao Xun's hand. Seeing him arrive, Consort Chen scrambled up and kicked my knee hard. She threw herself into his arms, her face filled with the grievance of a narrow escape. Zhao Xun pushed her away and picked me up.
Yinju, I understand your grief, but she does not deserve to pay with her life.
I exhausted all my strength and, like a kite with a broken string, collapsed weakly into his embrace. Tears, like a burst dam, kept streaming down my cheeks. Consort Chen was placed under house arrest, forbidden to leave without an imperial decree. But Zhao Xun was shielding her, and my poison could not get to her at all. Knowing my days were numbered, I began to make my final arrangements. Everything I wanted to say had already been made clear. I left only one request for Zhao Xun, to make noble Consort Li the Empress. After hearing this, he nodded in agreement, his fingertips gently brushing the stray hair beside my face. A flash of helplessness and heartbreak appearing in his eyes. He gazed at me in silence for a long time before speaking.
What about me? Do you have nothing to say to me?
Your voice sounds a bit raspy. What else is there for me to tell him? He ruled the world, with his favorite consort by his side. I really wanted to say I hated him, but I couldn't. I was dying, but those who remained still had to treat him as their emperor. I forced a smile. Her face was deathly pale, and whispered, "Then I wish your majesty a secure reign and eternal life." He suddenly gripped my hand tightly. Zhao Xun lowered his head, pressing his forehead against mine, trembling uncontrollably.
If there is a next life, I will still make you my empress.
A warm tear fell between my brows. My consciousness is already fading. In my haze, I think to myself, if there is a next life, I will never be his empress again. And so, I died in his arms, while he held my freezing hand, unable to warm it up no matter what. It was much like it is now, falling and fluttering all over the sky, wetting my face. I wiped the rainwater off my face and sighed softly. The Empress planned to have her trusted nanny send me out of the palace. I waited for a long time, and when I turned to look, the palace doors were tightly locked. A figure stood under the eaves, holding a closed umbrella, looking at me through the bead, like curtain of rain. He met my gaze. It was Zhao Xun, I recalled. that before the imperial marriage was decreed, the empress had tried to match us up. I had pursued him for a time, accompanying him on horseback hunts and writing poetry together. His attitude toward me had always been cold and distant. It was only after our grand wedding that he finally offered me a smile, as if he had no choice, as if he had accepted his fate.
Spending the rest of my life with you doesn't seem so bad after all.
I quietly took a step back. He lowered his head and curtsied. "Greetings, Your Highness." He slowly walked down through the misty rain. His eyes and brows seemed drenched, carrying a touch of inexplicable loneliness.
Why isn't it you?
He asked me, likely out of pure bewilderment. Originally, when I was with Li Shuanghua, the Empress favored me more, and I liked him too. I stood frozen. Everyone else nearby had been dismissed. Seeing that I didn't answer, he looked down at me. The youthful Zhao Xun had always been quiet and reserved, treating others with cold indifference. It seemed difficult for him to speak, yet he hesitantly asked again.
Why isn't it you? Clearly, Mother's initial choice was you.
This matter was hard to explain, impossible to put into words. How he had mistreated me in our past life had broken my heart entirely. Not to mention, my resentment had not faded in this life. Far from wanting to enter the palace, I even wished for his death. I pursed my lips tightly, only because Your Highness does not love me.
If I were to spend the rest of my life facing an affectionless man, it would inevitably be tedious and painful.
These words were ones he had spoken before. He called Consort Chen unique, the treasure in his palm. So, I had yielded at every turn, just to maintain outward peace and stability. I even went to the Empress Dowager to personally console and persuade her, never intending for him to spend the rest of his life looking at me with nothing but resentment. I departed this life too quickly, so quickly that my mother, before her hair had even turned white, had to receive my coffin outside the imperial city. While history books praised my grace and dignity, they spared no harsh words in condemning Consort Chen. But reflecting on it now, hollow fame is ultimately useless. Glory and power, after death, are nothing but fleeting smoke and clouds, leaving only one's dearest family in grief, while enemies gloat. This time, I want to live freely. Zhao Xun fell silent for a long time, his grip tightening around the handle of the umbrella, until his knuckles turned slightly white.
But if I mean...
Heavy raindrops splattered down, drumming against the surface of the umbrella. Your Highness, I calmly cut him off. The rain is getting heavier. If I delay any longer, the road will become difficult to travel. The palace gates behind us creaked open, and a senior maid holding an umbrella hurriedly appeared. She walked forward with a smile.
Your Highness, Her Majesty and Lady Li are waiting for you inside.
She turned her gaze toward me, seeing that I already had a paper umbrella. She handed me a handkerchief instead, reminding me to mind the rainwater on my clothes. I thanked her and took it. His words cut short. Zhao Xun let the matter drop. His gaze lingered on me for a brief moment before he looked away. He then took a step and entered the hall. The palace doors were left half closed, and the sound of the Empress chatting and laughing with Li Shuanghua drifted out, seemingly talking about Zhao Xun. He smiled faintly and chimed in with a couple of words. The nanny escorted me out of the palace. The palace paths were long and quiet. Only the most distinguished and noble were permitted to ride in sedans. After walking for a while, the hem of my skirt and my shoes were soaked, leaving me looking rather disheveled. The nanny helped me into the carriage, and suddenly let out a sigh, one laden with hidden meaning.
You are being foolish, my lady. His Highness, the Prince of Wei, felt pity for you. This old servant saw it all.
Was it affection? It was merely that my disposition had changed so drastically that he found it difficult to adapt, but I understood that she meant well. It was common knowledge that the Empress had no biological son and favored the Prince of Wei and the Prince of Qi. With the Crown Prince position vacant, the Prince of Wei, being the eldest, had the highest chance of succeeding. Lifting the curtain with my fingertips, I offered him a gentle smile. My ambitions lay elsewhere. When I arrived home early, no one needed to ask for details. They had already drawn their own conclusions. How could you not have been selected? My grandfather is one of the 3 ducal ministers. My father is a favorite before the emperor, and your talent and appearance are impeccable. How could Li Shuanghua have outshone you? My mother held my hand, offering comforting words with an evasive look.
Do not be sad, my child. There are plenty of good husbands in this world. Finding a match in another noble house would also be wonderful.
I waved my hand gently and said, I declined of my own accord. I said calmly, I do not wish to enter the prince's manor. I only want a husband of outstanding virtue. If we are not fated, I would rather not marry at all. My mother was stunned. She never expected that the PA family, with a century of wealth and honor, would raise someone with such an extreme temperament as mine. She did not know that I had been an empress and had my name recorded in historical annals. Living is actually exhausting, but I firmly believed she would understand. After I passed away, my mother cried her heart out. She gathered the wives of high officials to demand that Consort Chen be ordered to commit suicide. My father took off his official cap, knelt on the ground for a long time, and forced Zhao Xun to give them justice. I had had clearly left a letter, telling them to protect themselves and not to worry about me. Thinking up to this point, I lowered my eyes, my throat instantly choking up with tears. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. Strangely enough, the palace did not issue for a long time. The imperial decree of marriage for the Prince of Wei, the hopes of the various households, began to stir again. I met Zhao Xun again, during the flower festival. It was the height of spring, when all the flowers competed in beauty, perfect for going on an outing. The weather was clear, and the sunlight spilled over me, warm and cozy, making me instantly forget the coldness of Cunning Palace in the past. I stayed near the flower bushes, along with the young ladies of various households, cutting some silk ribbons and paper strips to tie among the tree branches. Li Shuanghua suggested writing some wishes on the paper. Not far from here, the talented scholars were gathering, drinking wine and composing couplets. The young lady of the Liu family kept looking over there, her face flushed with embarrassment. Everyone knew her betrothed was over there, so they teased her, telling her to go ask for brush and ink. When she returned with the writing materials, she was actually followed by an attendant. I recognized that servant. He was always by Zhao Xun's side. The attendant carried a rosewood tray, his posture humble, and his face full of obsequiousness. On the tray lay the 4 treasures of the study.
This is a gift from His Highness to the second young lady of the Pei family.
Such special favor astonished everyone present, but I stood frozen in place, feeling as if the lacquered tray were scalding hot. I could neither accept it nor push it away. Nothing like this had ever happened in the past. Mocking laughter erupted all around.
No wonder, His Highness. The Prince of Wei hasn't made his choice for so long. As it turns out, he looks down on the second Li daughter.
Li Shuanghua stood up abruptly, sweeping a cold gaze over everyone. The gathering fell silent. Angry, she flung her sleeves and walked away. I took the tray, set it aside carelessly, and said coldly, "The second young lady of the Lai family is highly favored by the Empress and constantly accompanies her. How could any of us compare to her? She was walking too fast. I had to quicken my steps to catch up with her. I did not know how to comfort her, so I just kept chattering in her ear. You've already done very well. There is no need to care about their idle gossip. In my past life, I was deeply depressed and relied entirely on her comfort. Yet because our aspirations differed, we could not truly feel each other's pain. She could not save me, and I could not help her either." After we walked along the path for a while, she let out a long, heavy sigh and pulled me back toward our seats.
Oh, well, if we run away, it will only make it look like they hit a sore spot.
I cut the paper slips. She wrote some words, and we prayed to the flower goddess. As soon as I put down the brush, it became her treasured calligraphy. As noon approached, the guests began to leave. Zhao Xun walked over here, stopping under the blooming flowers. He was tall and upright, and caught sight of my paper slip instantly. He tilted his head slightly, and, in a low voice, read it aloud.
Revisiting the old place to admire the view. Thankfully, there is no wind or rain, and the spring birds bring tidings of peace.
He was instantly taken aback.
Is this your only wish?
I did not look at him. Right, even a wish like this is extremely hard to come by. In my unbearable past life, everything that befell me was nothing but miserable wind and rain. It was the same before I died. It was clearly a beautiful spring scene with continuous drizzle, but I was afraid of the cold and the dampness. The lingering wounds caused unbearable pain. I always kept my bloodshot eyes open all night, listening to the rain falling on the withered leaves, calculating my own end. I clearly did nothing wrong, yet I ended up with such a fate after all. The same scene, with Zhao Xun added to it, would turn into a terrible memory. Zhao Xun casually picked up other paper slips, glancing over them nonchalantly.
Love, wealth, and power. Looks. You actually wish for none of them.
I did not answer him. The wind swept through the branches, and the paper slips and colorful ribbons all fluttered together. The spring air is vibrant. Pushing aside the ribbon, clinging to his forehead, his breathing is slightly uneven. Finding it completely dull, he averts his gaze. The tray is set aside, with the things he sent neatly arranged, showing absolutely no sign of having been touched. Zhao Xun's eyes darkened, as if he had finally realized that I was avoiding him like the plague. I have a more important plan to execute. After the flower festival, the matter I had been secretly investigating for a long time finally began to yield results. I found Consort Chen from my past life at a ruined temple in the suburbs. In the dead of night, I wore a veil, biting my lip hard, my mouth filled with the coppery taste of blood. My personal maid, Xu Yun, supported the unconscious girl before us. She said,
"Her registry and name have all been verified and are correct. She is indeed the person my lady has been looking for."
She did not ask why I held such a deep grudge against a commoner, that I absolutely had to take her life. Knowing only that, my resentment ran so deep that if she were not pulled out by the roots, I would find no peace for the rest of my life. A sharp, short blade was slipped into my palm, staring at that familiar face before me. I did not allow myself to hesitate, much less dare to think too deeply, and plunged it violently into her heart. The scalding blood splattered onto my face, burning my skin. in. I slumped to the ground, utterly lost, and covered my face with a handkerchief. The broken-armed Buddha statue stood majestically, as if beholding all things in the world. The night breeze swept by, and fallen blossoms drifted down, grinding into the dust. I remembered that child who once briefly passed through the mortal realm. He never had a name. Consort Chen claimed he died in infancy, a sign of misfortune, and so he was buried in haste, like a withered flower, scattered by the wind. At the time, I was unconscious, so I never saw him, and naturally, I failed to see him one last time. I clutched the old, worn incense burner beside me, my fingernails digging deep into it. My chest ached with a suffocating tightness, as if squeezed by a giant hand, making it hard to breathe. My sobs were desperately held back, broken and intermittent. Shuyun froze in surprise, then gently patted my back. I kept watch from the dark of night until dawn, making sure that my mortal enemy from my past life had drawn his last breath and grown completely cold. My first wish had been fulfilled. Shuyun helped me destroy the evidence and dispose of the body. Exhausted, I rushed out of the temple. The morning light pierced through the mist, casting slanted rays downward. At that moment, I saw him. A man stood waiting in the mist. He had a tall, elegant, and handsome posture, upright like a pine or bamboo. His attire was simple and elegant, making him blend in unobtrusively. I recognized him, yet at this moment he did not know me, and he had just happened to catch me right after I committed murder. In the past, Zhao Xun had often mentioned a certain man to me, the third-place graduate of that year's imperial examinations, Lu Weiyan. Zhao Xun admired his immense talent and wanted to bring him into his faction. As the princess consort of Wei, I had once accompanied Zhao Xun and met him once. He was dressed in crimson official robes, looking extraordinarily stunning and aloof, yet his demeanor was as cold as the snow on celestial peaks, making it hard for anyone to meet his gaze. When Zhao Xun summoned him, he used the excuse of being busy with government affairs to coldly decline. This provoked Zhao Shan's anger. The second time, when the Yellow River breached its dikes, he and Zhao Xun went to the disaster area. Zhao Xun only went to claim the credit. I pawned my jewelry and jade pieces, changed into simple clothes, and wore no ornaments, and distributed porridge by the roadside. The rain has stopped, and the sky has cleared, but the scorching sun is unbearable. I witnessed the full extent of human tragedy, my mind in complete turmoil, unable to eat or sleep. I stood all day long under this blistering heat. At night, seeing how haggard I looked, Zhao Xun held me tenderly in his arms. He urged me not to overexert myself. For the next few days, I went there, as usual, and Lu Weiyan was already on site. No one would have expected. The nobles from the capital, precious as pearls and jade, who should have been pampered and lived in luxury, were now stepping deep into the mud, measuring the water level with their own hands, rushing to repair the dam, utterly heedless of the filth. I gazed at him, filled with admiration, watching him for a very long time, as if burned by my gaze, his back tense, refusing to turn around. Afterward, Zhao Xun attempted to win him over once again, only to find out that he had already aligned himself with Prince Qi. Prince Qi was benevolent, and is also Zhao Xun's greatest rival. With the grand victory at Moju, the Prince of Qi was defeated and executed. Zhao Xun ascended the throne, and Lu Weiyan became a prisoner. I went to the dungeon to lobby him on Zhao Xun's behalf. The new emperor appreciated talent. If he is willing to abandon his employer and pledge his loyalty to Zhao Shun, it would make for a beautiful tale. Power and wealth, he would have it all. But he scoffed at it cold-heartedly. Clad in tattered clothes, he huddled in the shadows. His messy, loose hair covered his face, and his complexion was deathly pale, leaving no trace of his former brilliance. Yet, when he lifted his face, his expression remained indifferent and calm, as though he had long chosen death. When our eyes met, I was left speechless, and in the end, I could not bring myself to urge him to surrender. Instead, I quickly called the servants in, clean up this place, and bring him some charcoal to ward off the cold. I begged Zhao Xun to spare his life, and banish him from the imperial capital. To spare a civil official of such integrity would show the emperor's magnanimity. The emperor granted the request, exiling Lu Weiyan to the remote borderlands. After that parting in the prison, until the end of my life, the two of us never met again. As the man slowly approached, only then did I notice him carrying books, returning from a long journey. Mist and clouds seemed to rest on his eyelashes and brows, reflecting in his eyes, which also seemed misty. His appearance was not like in the old dream, where he was still youthful and gentle. I knew Lu Weiyan came from a poor family, but I never expected the ancient temple, the scholar, and the journey to the imperial exam. Everything was just like in the plays. The young ladies in those stories would give traveling expenses to the struggling scholars and entrust them with their lives. If it were me, perhaps, I would also give him some money, but only in the hope that he would never speak of this, sealing away this very moment. At this moment, my palms are covered in sweat. Clenching my gauze skirt, I reached out a hand. Lu Weiyan spoke.
I have already searched the area. All is quiet around us. As for this matter, I will not speak of it to anyone.
His tone was like a gust of wind, brushing through the shadows of the trees, shaking down the green dew. I froze, my mind unable to find peace. I was willing to believe him. The words he spoke would never be broken, but in truth, Even if I didn't believe him, there was no way out. While a mere commoner's enemies could be wiped away, Lu Weiyan now held academic honors from the imperial examinations. I could absolutely not silence him as well, lest it invite a catastrophic disaster. And so, I withdrew my hand and said in a low voice, "My thanks." The thin silk of his veiled hat was like drifting clouds. I could not see his expression clearly. He seemed to curve his lips slightly, and the past, like fallen blossoms carried away by the water, faded and vanished. Aside from the three of us, no one else knew. During the mid-spring imperial examination, my mother, concerned about my undecided marriage, often joked about having my father select a son-in-law from the postings. The Empress was also anxious and uneasy. She selected another group of candidate brides, but this time, Zhao Xun was even more demanding. He looked at all the beautiful women, but was pleased by none, always feeling something was amiss. Rumor had it that he dreamed of a woman who was of noble birth, gentle and considerate, soft-spoken, warm and gentle, who had always been kind to her servants. They had shared trials and tribulations, treating each other with mutual respect, living in perfect harmony. In the dream, a silent drizzle fell, and the weeping willows swayed gently. He could never see her face clearly, waking up only to feel an immense emptiness. Elegant and beautiful young ladies filled the entire capital, but who would dare to vow that the chosen one would accompany him through thick and thin, and remain united with him in heart for the rest of their lives? My mother looked at me with worry in her eyes as she combed my long hair.
Of noble birth and gentle disposition, I still feel the Prince of Wei has you in his heart.
I shook my head, hiding my blood-stained fingers inside my sleeves. My hands were ice cold, never to be warmed again. How could I be considered kind? I had just taken a life, and in the future, I would have to eliminate another. On the day the exam results were posted, I went up to a tea house, dragged along by Li Shuanghua, to watch the top graduate parade through the streets. She insisted that I must watch, treating it as a pleasant diversion.
Rumor had it that this year's top graduate, his face was even handsomer than the Tanhua's.
I was slightly dazed. Before becoming the princess, I paid no attention to official affairs. After so many years, without any involvement, I couldn't even remember who the top 3 graduates were. The warm breeze was inviting, and apricot blossoms drifted in the air. I raised my hand to adjust my hair and looked down. In an instant, I froze. Lu Weiyan rode on a tall horse, wearing a flower in his hair, in his moment of greatest triumph. Yet his expression was calm, showing neither pride nor impatience. Flower petals covered his shoulders. The other half of the petal that had just brushed my hair swirled and fell with my movement. He snapped his head up and reached out to catch it. In perfect harmony, our eyes met, as if spanning 1,000 years, making it hard to tell past from present. Not until my maid came upstairs to call me.
My lady, the master is calling for you.
Did I hurriedly gather my long skirt and run downstairs. That year, my father was in charge of the Imperial Palace examination. Taking advantage of his position, he still had to compete fiercely for a long time, and almost came to blows with others before securing this composed and reserved top scholar. My father claimed credit before me.
This young master, Lu, was invited by me with great effort. It is just a pity that this talented man is so tongue-tied.
I was stunned.
He just doesn't dare to speak to you. But I have already made the decision for you and intend to propose marriage to you in person. Though he is indeed dull and taciturn, his memorials are exceptionally brilliant.
Is he afraid to open up to me? I recalled carefully. Everyone said Lord Lu was extremely handsome, but possessed a proud and aloof nature, preferring to break rather than bend. Yet, he was only afraid of seeing me, always averting his gaze in a panic each time, as if encountering a fierce beast. Before the Imperial Chonglin banquet even began, Lu Weiyan had already dismounted, standing to the side. His back was tall and straight, his bearing extraordinary. His fingertips seemed to be trembling violently, the fallen flower in his palm shaking incessantly. He lowered his cold eyes. The tips of his ears flushed as crimson as the flower in his hair. His tone filled with nervousness.
I, Lu, am mediocre, with only my sincerity and my life to offer, to lay before second Miss Pei.
This confession must have taken immense courage. I knew. He was a man of exceptional character. I had seen him plead on behalf of the people, and I had seen him risk his life to remonstrate. Every aspect of him seemed entirely virtuous. I slowly rubbed the hem of my skirt. An engagement was likely unavoidable. If it were indeed him, it would not be a bad thing. I looked up, the corners of my mouth curving slightly. Very well. My father smiled and nudged his colleague's shoulder.
Go on, go on. The top scholar has already become the Pei family's son-in-law. There is no need to look further.
The sound of hooves drew near. In an instant, the entire area fell dead silent. The ministers turned around to bow and pay their respects. I stood up as well. I saw him dismount with long strides and walk straight toward me. The dark shadow he cast on the ground enveloped me, pressing down like a dark, heavy cloud. He questioned me in a freezing voice.
Pei Yinju, what did you promise him?
The Prince of Wei was part of the entourage today. At this moment, he actually blocked the path, stopping everyone in their tracks. His expression was furious, like an impending storm. I did not shrink back. With all the officials here, and the emperor present, and under the watchful eyes of everyone, would he actually dare to do anything extreme? name. I raised my head and answered with calm composure. I accepted a marriage proposal from the top scholar. These ordinary words were like a massive boulder crashing into a lake, stirring up a tempest in his eyes. He looked as if he had been struck by lightning, and his body went stiff. Anxiety, unease, and confusion intermingled in his eyes. Lu Weiyan's gaze fixed on the man beside him, his brow as cold as ice. I lowered my eyes. As the grand feast was about to begin, it was inconvenient to remain in the courtyard. I took my leave of everyone and departed first. The Changlin feast was bustling with excitement. I heard from my father that the newly crowned top scholar was a brilliant young talent. His Majesty was absolutely delighted, and during the feast, he betrothed me to Lu Weiyan. The Prince of Wei seemed completely distracted. For some unknown reason, he accidentally dropped and shattered a wine cup. The betrothal between Lu Weiyan and me was finally set in stone. He sent over a vast amount of betrothal gifts, which included rewards from His Majesty, as well as famous paintings acquired at great cost. Bypassing the Imperial Academy, he was directly appointed to an official post by the Emperor and began receiving his official salary. His payslips grew thicker and thicker. As I flipped through the ledger, I felt extremely surprised. In our past life, he had remained alone and unmarried to the very end. Zhao Xun had once teased me, saying that with a personality like his, if he actually got married, one couldn't begin to imagine what it would look like. He had eyes only for official business. Being his wife would probably be a cold and lonely existence. Only now did I realize that though he was not fabulously wealthy, he was willing to offer up everything he had to present me with his utmost sincerity. Taking advantage of his day off, Lu Weiyan and I went out for an excursion. A stream wound around us, and fallen blossoms drifted by. He held a long oar, punting the wooden boat forward. Looking at him from the side, I only just noticed how large his hands were, distinctly angular and well-defined. No wonder he had done hard labor in his past life and worked as a hired hand. Lu Weiyan became slightly self-conscious under my gaze. The bow of the boat veered, bumping toward the riverbank. I leaned down as the wind swept past my bamboo hat. The light veil brushed against his cheek. His eyelashes fluttered, and he suddenly turned his face away, reaching out to adjust the veil, her entire face turning red, too shy to meet my eyes.
Yinju.
It was the first time I had ever heard him call me that. In our past lives, by the time he entered the capital, I had long been designated as the prince's consort. Later, I also became the noble empress. When the palace attendants went to the prison to deliver the decree, saying Her Majesty had pardoned him, brightness finally returned to his lifeless eyes. He kowtowed to express his gratitude, yet he still did not address me by any title. He said, "Speaking of that day, I had actually been guarding the temple gate all along." His fame spread throughout Zhongnan. Some had already curried favor with him and gifted him travel expenses. He did not need to stay in temples. He was merely passing through the area and happened to witness my violent act. Lord Lu had been upright and righteous his entire life, but on that one occasion, the only action he took was to block the news and help cover for me. The cold wind howled outside the window. As I wept, and he was sighing, he said,
Your vengeance is not yet complete, right?
My heart ached with sorrow again. Clutching my veil, I whispered, "Yes, no need to say more." He was also reborn.
I originally did not dare to propose marriage, feeling unworthy, but having witnessed the past, I learned that even if one rises to be the emperor, it is still difficult to win your heart, and he is even less worthy of you, living this life again. I took the top score in the imperial exam, and won your father's high regard. Only then did I dare to take this chance, and beg you, Yinju, to fulfill my wish.
The boat rocked gently and drifted for half an hour before finally reaching the shore. I placed my hand in Lu Weiyan's and stepped down from the bow, holding up my skirt, only to run straight into Prince Wei's entourage. He had been waiting there the entire time, staring at our tightly clasped hands. His expression grew fierce and menacing. Zhao Xun. He remembered everything. He remembered how I had assisted him, not just the little things, but building his prestige. On the day of the mutiny, I was also by his side, sharing his trials and tribulations. Stepping closer and closer, he demanded,
"Yinju, why must you stay by another man's side?"
His hair was unkempt that day, and having ridden his horse at full speed to get here, he looked extremely disheveled. This only served to make him. His expression was gloomy and menacing, stripped of his former nobility.
"I would not have listened to Yinju, and would have ground your bones to ashes."
These last few words were spoken with immense gravity, showing he truly hated him to the core. Lu Weiyan did not flinch in the slightest, meeting his gaze with calm composure. The wind blew over the water. The ribbon at the back of his head fluttered wildly in the wind, like seeing the light.
Your Highness, the situation has long since changed. The final outcome of this battle is yet to be decided.
In this second life, he was not the emperor. The dust had not yet settled. If the Prince of Qi were to ascend the throne, the one who would be torn to pieces would be Zhao Xun. Zhao Xun's eyes were bloodshot as he stared intently at me, his expression turning haggard.
"Do you also believe in your heart that I am destined to lose this time?"
The nearby worshippers had already been cleared out, and no one dared to steal a glance in our direction. He spoke again.
"To become my primary wife. Yet, you actually felt utterly wronged."
Lu Weiyan's gaze turned cold, and in an instant, he shielded me behind him. He stood tall and straight, his imposing aura pressing directly upon Zhao Xun.
Your Highness is mistaken. Why even ask such a question?
until the day I died. I had been Zhao Xun's princess consort for 7 years. I had always played by the rules, and had never once shown him anger. He always believed he had treated me well. Within the imperial harem, I held the phoenix seal. Even if a favored concubine wished to replace me, she could not shake my position. On my deathbed, I wished him long life and happiness, and he promised to meet again in the next life. He firmly believed that this was a solemn vow. As long as we met again, we would resume our fateful bond, and I would still be his one and only empress. Even though he clearly sensed my despair, he chose to ignore it as a matter of course. Those words back then were nothing but a performance. I stared at him. As withered petals drifted down beside him, the daylight had already dimmed. Did I wrong you, Zhao Xun? In this life, I would rather grow old and die without ever seeing him again. I only want to protect the one by my side. My words to him did not contain a single shred of sincerity. The expression on Zhao Xun's face crumbled and collapsed piece by piece. His face turned deathly pale. Filled with shock, he stumbled backward repeatedly, his body swaying uncontrollably, as if he were about to fall. I turned my head to look at Lu Weiyan, with a smile in my eyes. Where shall we go next?
To the temple, to match our marriage horoscopes.
After Lu Weiyan and I had our horoscopes read and set the date for our grand wedding, Zhao Xun was ultimately left with no options. Only now did he understand how helpless I once was. To have a title in name only, and a respectable facade, yet with the emperor pressing down from above, without his permission, one could not make a single decision. Zhao Xun knelt before the Zikan Palace, refusing to rise for a long time. A bundle of bamboo scrolls was thrown onto the floor tiles, grazing his brow bone.
Nonsense. How dare you try to forcibly take the wife of a court official? Do not mention this matter ever again. If you dare to behave willfully again, you will be sent back to the Shu region.
This was an extremely severe reprimand, meaning the painful loss of his claim to the throne. On the day of my wedding, Zhao Xun was absent from the banquet. The emperor had strictly forbidden Lu Weiyan from inviting him. He stayed at the most famous tavern in the capital, drinking himself into a stupor. When he woke up this time, he had finally seen the truth. But no matter what, to him, power and status were still the most important things. While he was despondent, I was celebrating my auspicious hour. In the past, Zhao Xun was humble to the outside world, but cold to the primary wife he resented. Lu Weiyan was strict and stern to the outside world. Only when looking at me did he lose all his courage to speak frankly. With just a few words, his entire face would flush red, worrying all day that I would find him dull. Slightly tipsy, I wrapped my arms around his neck and asked him hazily, "At what exact moment did you fall for me?" Lu Huanian replied,
"When I saw you step forward."
The candlelight flickered, stirring up a restless desire, and blurring the line between past fate and the present. I teased him petulantly. Lord Lu is bold indeed. His Adam's apple bobbed, knowing his feelings back then were a forbidden desire. He gently and slowly clasped my palm, leaning down to press against me, the starlight in his eyes burning bright and intense.
This Lu guy dares to be even more presumptuous. May I?
After Zhao Xun sobered up, he immersed himself in official duties again, relying on his grasp of his past life's memories. He should have achieved great things. Every single plan was precisely laid out by him. Yet, if even one detail deviated, the entire game would be lost. Our starting over had already quietly set the destined path off course. The past disasters did not arrive on schedule. The cause of the flood had changed, and the scale of the refugees had completely altered as well. Zhao Xun, once full of confidence, was actually caught completely off guard. Instead of becoming a great hero, it was Prince Qi who handled it well. He was of a kind nature and deeply pitied the poor. Lu Weiyan and I visited many places together. I still distributed food and lent a hand at the medical clinics while he rolled up his sleeves to work in the fields, taking on the hard labor that no one else wanted to do. I recalled when I first met him, I simply didn't believe that the third-rank scholar, famous for his good looks, would not only be terribly old-fashioned, but also willing to do such heavy, dirty work. Yet this time, I was the one standing shoulder to shoulder with him in the filthy mud, not caring at all. And I didn't care at all. Along the way, the refugees spoke of our kindness, as if Pei Yinju and Lu Weiyan were destined to become a couple. I lost myself in thought for a moment, and slowly came to understand this was exactly what I had hoped for, to share life and death together. Lu Weiyan was promoted. He put on his red court robes once more. As the Prince of Qi's trusted confidant, he was even more calm and rational than in his past life, handling every single matter with absolute steadiness. But recently, the palace has been in turmoil. The emperor fell critically ill, which happened earlier than in my past life. Just like in my past life, he died suddenly, leaving behind no imperial decree or even a single word. The Prince of Qi had long been on his guard, and Zhao Xun was naturally the same, instigating a military mutiny. After half a day of bloody battle, Zhao Xun has fled. Though he was at a disadvantage, he had, after all, been the emperor, and knew the layout of the imperial city extremely well, including secret passages known only to the Son of Heaven. The Prince of Qi was deeply worried, fearing that failing to eliminate the threat once and for all, allowing him to make a comeback. I said, "I know where the Prince of Wei is going to hide." The Prince of Qi Ji glanced at me, utterly shocked. Then he looked at Lu Weiyan. Lu Weiyan's expression remained unchanged. He said,
I will lead the troops and follow you.
I found Zhao Xun. We hadn't met in a long time, and he too was frowning with worry. His face haggard and worn. His battle robe was stained with blood, as if he had reached the end of the road. The personal guards by his side were all dead, but there were still former subordinates outside the palace to support him. As long as he could protect himself, he still had a chance of winning. My gaze grew gentle. Zhao Xun, I can lead you to escape. It was a casual remark. The moonlight was bright and clear, illuminating my long hair and the hem of my skirt. Just like in the past, the times when I used to accompany him by his side. I'll talk. I do not wish for you to die. He looked over in panic, his eyes actually glistening with tears, filled with pleasant surprise and shock, seemingly deeply touched. He used to bestow such glimmers of light upon me in the same way. He said,
Consort Chen is at your disposal.
However, he had actually pierced my hand with a sword, destroying my only remaining chance to fight back. I wanted to cry, yet I also wanted to laugh. In his eyes, he actually thought I was still in love with him, feeling heartbroken for him. In the end, we have been married for 7 years. In the end, he is certain he can win my heart. Zhao Xun stands up.
And I'll go with you. If I can reclaim the throne, I will dissolve the imperial harem and favor you alone.
Concealing the mockery in my eyes, I lifted my skirt and led him to escape along a secluded secret passage. However, my stamina was no match for his, and I gradually fell behind him. Clenching the blade hidden in my sleeve, I gasped heavily. Zhao Xun, I can't walk any further. He turned around to pull me along. To his surprise, a sharp blade pierced his chest. I drew out the sharp blade and ruthlessly stabbed it back in. His eyes widened in disbelief, and from his throat came a gurgling sound of blood. I smiled slightly. How does it taste? Being blindsided? Having been caught off guard, he had long lost the strength to fight back, with only half his life remaining. Therefore, I was extremely patient. As I chatted with him, your formerly most beloved consort Chen is dead. I killed her long ago. It is just a shame you died at the wrong time, so you won't be able to reunite with her in the underworld. He desperately reached out his hand, as if trying to grab the hem of my skirt in a death grip, breathing more out than in. His voice was garbled and barely audible. He said,
Yinju, really? After your death, I executed her too, making her pay for your life.
I did not live to see that day, so I had no idea if these words were true or false, let alone any way to guess whether Consort Chen was his true love or just a plaything to amuse him. I only remembered that I had once treated him incredibly well, without reservation, while he treated me horribly, absolutely horribly, like an enemy. I suddenly looked away and plunged the blade in once more. The hidden warriors lying in ambush all around all stood up straight. I was highly prepared. I was by no means dealing with him alone. Even if he discovered my ulterior motives, it would be of no use. The only difference was dying by my hand, compared to the alternative of dying from a barrage of arrows. I gripped the blade tightly, every single word. I have personally slain the rebel. Lu Weiyan strode forward, pulling me into a tight embrace. He wiped the cold sweat from my temples, supporting my trembling body, and leaned down to rest his forehead against mine. He let out a long sigh. He said,
Yinju.
He mentioned nothing else, but his tone was filled with tenderness and heartache, changing time and time again. Going from a truly gentle and kind person to where I am today, I have crossed too many thresholds. This is probably the first spring I have experienced since my rebirth. The new emperor has ascended the throne, spreading his grace across the land. Taxes were reduced to 1/30. The wind is gentle, the rain is soft, and dead wood begins to sprout anew. For my service in supporting the accession, I was infamed as a commandery princess. The emperor pitied my long-standing mental exhaustion and granted Lu Weiyan a full month of leave, hoping he could accompany me on a leisurely journey to ease my mind. As the pleasure boat drifted down the river, we inevitably encountered cold rain midway, wearing only a simple straw cloak, and granted Lu Weiyan a full month of leave, hoping he could accompany me on a leisurely journey to ease my mind. As the pleasure boat drifted down the river, we inevitably encountered cold rain midway, wearing only a simple straw cloak. I stood at the bow of the boat, letting the raindrops splash into my palm. He kept watching my expression, fearing that the scene would trigger painful memories of the past. I gave a carefree smile. I won't. In the end, it is. Watching the tide rise amidst a river of rushing rain.